Shalom. First and foremost, before I get started, I'm going to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and peace and salutation to elect out there feeding the sheep of Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, with sincerity and truth. I'm the brother Barak. Lord willing, this will be an edifying lesson. And the topic of this lesson is going to be mainly about your own strength will not save you from this destruction, right? And you're especially speaking about your own physical strength in this human body, right? In this flesh, right? The temporary flesh, right? Now, we're coming up to a period of time where it's going to be so bad out here, right, that we need Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahshai. We can't do it off of we can't survive off of our own, using our own strengths, right? No matter the amount of, no amount of money, right? No amount of food, no amount of how much you can bench press, right? How many people you can fight, right? How many years you've trained martial arts, right? How many guns you own, right? How many people you know, all that is not going to be profitable during the day of destruction, right? You're going up against, this devil Esau Edom. He has weapons that, actually, first of all, he has weapons that he hasn't even revealed to the public yet, right? You wouldn't even be able to see these weapons coming, and they could attack you from, just using frequencies and sound waves, right? There's no running from these things, right? But also, right, it could be a bad thing to honestly, it's a bad thing when you believe you can do this off with your own strength, right? And we see that in the scriptures, so we're going to bring this out. This is the book of 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse 33, right? And it says, "And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." Right? Basically, King Saul was when there was the battle against these Philistines, right? And there was Goliath, right, being 9 feet tall, roughly, right? And King David only being a very young and a lot smaller compared to Goliath, right? King Saul was basically he was basically completely lacking faith, right? And Saul was basically he was counting Goliath's accolades, right? Saying, this man was, basically basically measuring him out, right? Kind of, this man slayed this man is a man of war, right? You could basically you can't stand any chance against this guy, right? Because King Saul, he basically he lacked faith, right? And he was so focused on measuring Goliath, right, and the Philistines' army, right? King Saul, he did not have trust in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, right? I'm going to continue reading. It says, "And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock." Basically, King David was saying that, that when he had to basically, the Lord basically prepared him for for things like this, because he was already put up against the odds, right? When there were lions, right, in the fields, like there were he had the, and these lions are they're not like some tiny creature, right? These are these beasts will literally tear you into shreds, right? They can, all it takes for them to just bite into your arm, right, and just it'll rip it off basically with instantly almost, right? So basically, right, King David, he was basically saying how he actually, the Lord, he puts him through put him through different things to actually prepare him for these things, right? And that's also speaking about how the Lord, he will basically prepare us, put us through certain situations for and he'll basically basically give you tribulations, right? Give you certain lots you have to deal with, but these things are all meant to prepare you for. These things are meant to prepare you for a future time period, right? Certain brothers, for example, right? They're right now they might not have that much food in their house, right? They might have to deal with certain individuals at work, right? Their cars might always break down. Their houses might their house most of their appliances in their house might not be working, right? You might not have running water, right? You might not have ways to cook food. Ultimately, that's through Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, because there's gonna be a time where there's gonna be a time where that's gonna be the reality for many of these people, right? And the Lord you might be put in a similar situation again, but you will have this time you will have the preparation beforehand, right? Because the Lord he ultimately he gave you similar burdens to handle prior, right? So, right, going on to verse 35, it says, "And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him." Right. Let's see. I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. Right. "Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai." Right? And King David, he's basically saying that the Lord, he prepared him for this situation because he basically was in prior situations beforehand, right? And but ultimately, the Lord put the spirit of faith, right, on King David to believe that he can basically beat Goliath, right? And he gave him the powers in that moment, right? All that was given to him by Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, right? And Salakia. Esau, he's putting stuff in the air, right? But King David, the Lord, he put the spirit and power on King David to basically beat Goliath, right? And what happened? King David, he was basically able to slay Goliath, right? And ultimately, that story shows you have to have faith in that the Lord, he's going to deliver you out of this thing, man, right? He's going to deliver you out of whatever problem that you're going through. There is certainly a way out, right? And especially the time that is going to come, right? And the brother Emo Abad from Great Millstone, Elder Emo Abad, from the Great Millstone DC camp, right? He basically said, people lack faith because they go off only what they can see, right? And basically, you see that today where a lot of people they're trying to what? They're trying to find the, people want to have the most guns, right? They believe that what's going to save them is having the most guns, having the biggest army, right? And you see there was this one woman, she was basically like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu BJJ athlete. Her name is Taylor something. I don't know her last name, but the brothers were making videos on her. Basically, she was basically saying how during an apocalypse that she needs a man, of stability, right? She was basically listing, the attributes, right? Of what a man has to be able the man has to have in order to survive the apocalypse, right? She was basically listing, certain attributes, right? Just all these different things, right? Basically, the man has to be strong, right? The man has to know how to cook and shoot and all these different things, right? But the thing is, man, that if the reality is if the Lord is not dealing with you, you are going to be destroyed. You're going to be fucking destroyed, obliterated by what's going to happen. We need spiritual powers for this destruction that's going to happen. That's the spirit, because on the timer of my video, right, I adjusted the video clip, and both the video parts of the video clip just say 144 on it, right? So Kala Yehovah Hashem Yashai. Basically, we need spiritual powers, whether the Lord intervenes, right, and basically tweaks your spiritual power, right, or Lord does various miracles to where he allows certain individuals not to see you, right? Whatever it's going to be. That's I don't know how it's going to play out, but during that time, the Lord he will lift up a standard. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 59, and verse 19, and it says, "So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him," right? And that's going into spiritual powers that we're going to receive, basically to basically put this devil into first of all, be delivered from this goddamn evil ass wicked place, and second of all, to put this devil into captivity, right? We need intervention from Yahweh Hashem Yahshai, right? The stuff that you have on this side, without you're basically your flesh, right? It's not going to be able to do a damn thing, right? You have to be able to you need Yahweh Hashem Yahshai to survive this, right? Without the Lord, man, we're basically we're nothing. We're literally nothing. And you don't want to be like King Saul, right? Where he basically was like I said earlier, he was basically counting, right? He was counting the armies, basically seeing how many people do we have compared to how many do they have, who is that person? Who is this person? Like, all carnal, man, right? But King David, he basically had faith, and the Lord, he basically he basically put basically gave King David he basically the Lord gave him the power to with the rock, right? When he used that rock, right? And the sling to hit Goliath, and he allowed Goliath to get hit. He allowed Goliath to get completely destroyed, right? He didn't need anything else, right? But the Lord, he gave King David the strength, right, and ultimately, the power, and he put he allowed it to go exactly where it needed to be, right? And and it symbolically, right? We are David, right? The ministry, you can think of it as we are David, right? The ministry of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, and Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is the rock, right? And the same way King David destroyed Goliath, right? The same way, we're gonna destroy this devil Esau Edom, right? You can think of this devil system as Goliath, right? But we need intervention from Yahweh Hashem Yahushai in order to do that, right? And in order to make it out of this fucking hell that we're in right now, right? It's the book of Hebrews 11:6. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Right? And and what is faith, right? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Right? And the ministry that we're in, right, requires faith, right? It's not only about carnal things that we can see, right? Things that we can just pick up, physical things, right? Appearance and numbers and all these different carnal things that Esau he is always speaking about, right? This is a spiritual thing, right? It's not just about the physical appearance, right? And brothers speak about this all the time, right? Appearance is just an indicator, right? You know what I'm saying? And these carnal things, right? Are the reason that a lot of people are going to get destroyed in the latter days, because they're gonna end up being too prideful, end up thinking that they're gonna be able to survive this off their own strength, survive on their own terms, right? And these people are the same people that believe that they don't need the Lord, right? But what we're doing, right, requires faith, right? From Elder Manasseh Zakbal from GMS South Carolina, he said, faith is basically a free gift from the Lord, right? It's a free gift from Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, right? And that's basically the shield, right? If you hear about people speak about you have to put on the armor of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, right? And one of those parts of the armor is the shield of faith, right? So that can only be given to you by Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, right? You can't trust on your own power, your own understanding, right? None of that is going to keep you from the destruction that's going to happen, right? The only thing that's going to keep you or deliver you from this destruction is Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, right? So with that being said, I'm going to give all glory and honor to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai Hashem Merkakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and peace and salutations to the elect out there feeding the sheep of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Shalom.